to the greatest Bengali ever born, our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, on his birth centennial year. We specially thank him for all the achievements that we have today in our country, and we pay our greatest respect to his memory, because it was because of him today we are dreaming to become a developed country by the year 2040. I also pay my respect to the memory of his family members who were brutally assassinated in 1975 on the 15th of August. And I am also paying my respect to the martyrs of our glorious War of Independence of 1971. I am also paying my respect to all the ladies who were violated by the Pakistan army during that time, and their sacrifices have made possible this independent nation that we call Bangladesh. Let me first of all thank BCSIR for inviting me here today at this International Conference on Science and Technology for celebrating the birth centenary of Bangabandhu. I am not from scientific background, but I take a keen interest in promoting science and technology as part of our political commitment. Our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, Bangabandhu's daughter, as you know, she herself is a very keen promoter of science education and higher research in science. Her husband was one of the most prominent scientists of the country, and her son is also, he's from scientific background. He has graduated with natural science, physics and computer science, etc., and other subjects, in addition to his public policy education. So she understands the importance of science and technology education, and also raising awareness amongst the students in science and technology. It was because of her visionary leadership we promoted information and communication technology and computer science education in this country in the year 1996, when she first started her reign as a Prime Minister of this country. She removed all the duty barriers on computer-related accessories and computers, which made it possible for our people to afford computer equipment and use them for study purposes. It was because of that we were able to take that initiative of Digital Bangladesh in 2009, when she returned back to power after a certain period of time of darkness, to be fair, during the time when Bangladesh's literacy level itself went down from what it was in 2001 when she was leaving power due to whatever reason, as you know. I don't want to elaborate on those. But we have not even comprehended, we could not have dreamed that Bangladesh would have come to where it has come today. Even the United Nations could not project that this country would have progressed at a rate that it has over the last decade and more. And it was during her time that we have seen our budgetary expenditure to our overall investment in education, science and technology has quadrupled. It was because of her initiative in her previous government of 1996 that the government started investing in research in agriculture and other science projects, and as an outcome of that, we, for the first time, became a country that was surplus in food production. So that trend continued for a while, but we lost out during the time of 2001 and 2008. As you know, we more or less regressed from where we were left in 2001. But it is important to note that it was because of Sheikh Hasina's visionary leadership that we now feel confident that we now have an ICT infrastructure in this country, which we are using to teach our students now in higher education institutions, and we are also using it to ensure public service. And we, despite the COVID pandemics, we were able to some extent, maintain some degree of teaching in our institutions, in our educational institutions, because of this ICT infrastructure, which was non-existent in 2009 when she began. So I just wanted to address these points here, because often we forget where we were, often we forget what was achieved in the last decade. The electricity generation that we have today, and not just the electricity generation, but infrastructure to socio-economic development, everything we are now very proud of, and the world is now acknowledging and appreciating, has been achieved over the last 12 years or so, for which we have to thank Bangabandhu's daughter, because if it wasn't for her and her honest, sincere, committed leadership for our people, we couldn't have progressed to where we are today. So we thank her even on this birth centennial conference in memory of our father of the nation, because it was our father of the nation's education philosophy and also his outlook and understanding of science and technology in general, that is what is being implemented by his daughter. As you know, Bangabandhu had a vision for our education system. His education philosophy was not taken up by the regime that assassinated him. Bangabandhu wanted an education system which would be outcome driven, technology driven, and also which would have had practical vocational element within it. And for that he commissioned the first education policy commission under the leadership of a scientist, Dr. Kudrate Khuda. So Bangabandhu understood the significance and importance of scientists and wanted science education ingrained in our entire education system, where science would not just be taught as a theoretical matter, but rather as something that would be applicable and practical and that would benefit society at large. So from that vision, we moved on to more populist model of expanding higher education for all in subjects which are not so relevant for their vocation. I don't mean to say that higher education should not be open and accessible for all, but which type of higher education should be promoted and should be expanded is a matter for policymakers to consider carefully, because if we are creating a large pool of non-technical and entirely humanities-based graduates for the nation, this is going to pose a great challenge for their employment in the future, because our country's economy cannot absorb such a huge number of unskilled to some extent and non-technical graduates within our industry, because we are moving from agrarian society to an industrial society where we need people with more technical skills. Which is why Bangabandhu's daughter, after many, many years, is now focusing on technical and vocational education for all, because without imparting technical and vocational education, we will not be able to create the manpower that our industry requires. When she took over in 2009, enrollment in our TVET education was 0%. Right now it has reached to 18%. And she's continuously asking us to focus on science and technology research and higher education in this field, and so that we are able to make higher education in science and technology accessible for our population and our graduates. She has also suggested that we we make sure that up to a certain age, all students leaving our schools get a minimal level of science education, because without that, they will not be able to be responsible citizens, and also they will not be able to develop scientific mindset. Because science education is one thing, but at the same time, scientific mindset is also very important, because as you know, it promotes tolerance, it promotes empathy, it promotes critical thinking, it promotes lots of different soft skills which employers require from students. So not just science education is important for a nation, but developing scientific mindset within the students is also very important. And I would like to request BCSIR to come up with plans and strategies to make science education easier for our students in schools. And I find that the manner in which we are teaching science in our schools are not very conducive to students and also for their understanding of scientific concepts. We feel that in especially schools, how the books are written on basic science subjects are not very easily readable, easily accessible by the students. Because if the language, if the medium of explanation or description or presentation is not easy enough for the students, they will not be able to grasp the concepts properly. And if they are not able to grasp the concepts properly, they are obviously going to memorize them, and rote memorization, as we know, is not good for science education, because they will not be able to expand from what they have learned as they progress in higher education. So we would like to request BCSIR, whilst they're doing very good under the leadership of our Dr. Muhammad Aftab Ali Sheikh, who had a very good academic career in Dhaka University, and we are delighted to see him in charge of BCSIR, because as a scientist, he was able to bring in qualitative change in BCSIR's activity, which is very, we appreciate that, and it has changed BCSIR's direction and stand on science education and research. So we would like to request that from BCSIR, could we find ways to teach our students in schools and colleges science in more readable and accessible language, because from what I have seen, the books written on basic science subjects are very difficult for the students to understand, and the questions and the method of assessment on science subjects is not very scientific in my view, and many scientists have also commented that we are not teaching science in the manner in which it should be taught. So we need to learn from other countries, from experiences of countries which have really improved their science education in school level, how they have done so without making the contents very difficult for the students. We need to make sure that the students enjoy and also feel excited about getting science education, and also develop a curious mindset and also good imaginative mindset, without which really science education cannot come to any positive outcome. Because if it is just rote memorization of formulae and experiments, they're not going to innovate anything out of it. And this has been repeatedly cited that in terms of innovation, we are still lagging behind, and we are not progressing so well like our peer countries. So this is a request to BCSIR that whilst you are working with our higher education institutions, could you please also collaborate with our National Curriculum and Textbook Authority to make sure that we are able to teach science to our students at an early age with a lot more pleasure and curiosity and enthusiasm than just the manner in which we are teaching at the moment. This is a work that will build the foundation for the future. Our Honorable Prime Minister has given us a target, as you know. This is where difference between mere leadership and visionary leadership lies. She has this vision for this delta, and that vision is not just for the next election or the next parliamentary contest or popular or for any populist reason. It is for generation. It is for the next successive generations that she has this vision for us. And as part of that vision, she is leaving us with a 100-year plan. Just like her father, she has this absolute love and commitment and devotion for this nation that she wants to leave us a sense of guideline and direction for successive generations to follow. Of course, generations will come and take their own lead and change the course of action of their time, but at least she's giving us a plan. And for that, she has commissioned a Delta Plan Commission, and in which she has outlined how to improve this great delta, which is a very fertile delta, which is meeting the food requirement of 170 million people, how to transform from an agrarian society into an industrial society, from mere supply of labor to skilled workforce. So all these things she has outlined and she's leaving for us in her Delta Plan. And as part of that Delta Plan, we see that already work has started to allocate different areas of the country for industrial setup without compromising ecology and environment, and without, because as you know, we have a very small landmass and we cannot forego our food security. That's our primary challenge, because we have 170 million people, one of the most densely populated country in the world. Before anything, everyone needs food. Without food, no one will be satisfied or happy or cannot progress. So, keeping food security, food shortage issues in mind, she has given us an outline where we should be building our industries and which industries we should be focusing, because our core strength is in agriculture. How can we transform agriculture into more value-added products? And she has also given us some guideline and direction on how to make sure that the great rivers that flow through this delta can be utilized for transport, for land filling and preparing the land for industrial usage and also agricultural usage, etc. And in line with that, our scientific community is also working very hard to direct and to do their research, keeping in mind all these industrial objectives and future progress of this country. I was just quickly going through some of the articles in the journal, and I'm not from science background. Only up to my O-levels I studied science, but after that I had to give up because I had to go into social science, although in my university some considered anthropology as science of some sort. But the contents there, from what I have seen from policy making point of view, are so much in line with how our government sees our next generation. So one just a small abstract I was reading, where some work was done on aquifer in the industrial area of Mirersarai, where our Honorable Prime Minister has decided to set up the Bangabandhu Industrial City. It's a huge landmass where not much is produced because of salination. It is not good for agriculture, but she has designated that area for industrial usage. So sourcing water for that area is a big challenge. So work has been done, research has been undertaken on finding water sources, natural aquifers or otherwise, and how to source water for that industrial area. And the finding is that extraction from the level that it has been identified that there is water supply would lead to lots of ecological problem, and therefore alternative should be used. So you see, our scientists are working keeping in mind that we need to develop that industrial area. We need water resource for that area, and they have already come up with solutions. And another aspect I have seen in the journal is that we have an overwhelming presence of our female scientists in all the work that has been done. In almost each and every article there is representation from our female citizens. This is a huge achievement for us, despite so many obstacles in this country and society, due to so many other reasons. We were struggling so much in empowering women, in making sure that they are able to go to higher education. And today, under the leadership of Sheikh Hasina, not only women are in position of power in terms of policy making, but also in scientific research, there is to some extent overwhelming representation from our women in all these articles, which is a hugely encouraging scene for us. And this is going to show our future generation that what Bangabandhu had said in 1952 in his book Amar Dekha Noya Chin, when he was just a 32-year-old man, coming from a feudal, communal, backward political system of Pakistan of the time, a young man who went to see China, the new China of the day, he made this comment that if God has made men and women equal, and if women get the same opportunity as men, they can also be scientists, they can also be pilots, doctors, engineers, politicians, everything. So, you see, Bangabandhu had this vision even as a 32-year-old man. At a time when he was just, fresh into the political arena, where he could have taken the populist line of, feudal mindset of repressing women, which was the norm of the day in 1950s. But he did not take that line. His personal opinion was that men and women are equal, and they should be given equal opportunities, and they should be treated equally, and only by doing so a country can progress. And he made this comment that, even during that time, Turkey, one of the Muslim countries at the time, even they have done so well in ensuring equal opportunities for women. So this was the vision he had for our country. But unfortunately, after we lost him, we too took that feudal line. We too took that communal line of the, 50s Pakistan, where we suppressed women, did not give them inheritance right, did not promote education for women, not only in basic education, in higher education, etc. But now we have come a long way from that. We still have a lot of obstacles to overcome. We still have to make sure that workplaces are safe for women, because we have a lot of women going into higher education. We cannot afford for this huge number of female graduates in science and technology. Many of them are graduating in natural science subjects and also in technology. We cannot afford them all going to household activities only, or being housemakers, homemakers only. We have to make sure that they are retained by our BCSIR to universities. We have to ensure that they are given fair and additional assistance to make sure that they utilize the knowledge and skill they have acquired from their time in educational institutions, in higher education and research, and by using their talent, we can all benefit. So it is also an encouraging sign, despite having so many difficulties in our day-to-day life, so many of our scientists who are women have come forward, are working very hard, and are assisting not only BCSIR's projects, but also in their own, they are running their own experiments and scientific research, etc., and contributing to our national goal of being a developed country by the year 2040. So, thanks to BCSIR, I was able to come and share a couple of thoughts with our scientific community and also our BCSIR's Administrative and Management Committee. I have made my requests and I have made my observations. Our Honorable Chief Guest is on his way. He will be here very soon. And me and him, we are supposed to attend another event at another university through the Zoom link. But unfortunately, he has not come here yet. Is he nearby? Within 5 to 6 minutes. So again, I would like to thank BCSIR for holding this international conference. There were so many representatives from so many different countries, and the contents are very rich, very applicable, very relatable, and for even a lay person like myself, very interesting. And from policy making point of view, all the researches that I have seen here, including their from solar energy to salination projects to plants, locally grown plants and their medicinal value. So many fantastic researches have been published and catalogued in the journal here. I wish the conference all the successes. It is the end. Today is the closing day. So all I have to say is that I would like to thank from the Ministry of Education to our BCSIR, and will request that BCSIR collaborate more with our education ministry as well as our higher education institutions, because without academia, science and technology research cannot progress. So academia industry linkage has to be there, plus in our country's context, because we have BCSIR, which is a dedicated institution for science and technology research, they must work together with our academia in every research that they do. We have to understand that without academic engagement, there is no progress in science and technology. So we have to incorporate our higher education institutions who have their own challenges, but those challenges are there. But for the purpose of research, BCSIR's funding is there. Government has made enough investment in BCSIR's capacity to allocate fund for research. We believe that they will be increased in the future, because as you know, despite being who we are, not a very rich country, but not a very infrastructurally rich until 2009, we are going into the nuclear age now. Not just mere energy production, but we are going into the nuclear energy production now. The pride of our country and dream of Bangabandhu, the Rupur nuclear energy project. For that, we thank our Science and Technology Ministry, especially because they have successfully, with the help of our friends in Russia, the government of Russia has assisted us greatly in setting up this nuclear power plant, and also we believe that there will be technology and knowledge transfer. I always say this to our higher education institutions, that we should try and collaborate with countries from where we can learn something. Those who will give us or transfer knowledge and skill to us. Unfortunately, in my personal opinion, despite being a student in a Western country, despite coming from a Western university, I have my own reservation and observation about Western universities, because often they run higher education as a market, as something that they sell. And that's the reality. So I don't believe in these ranking concepts that often come up. Why our universities don't show up in rankings? Because they don't sell higher education. If you look at rankings, often you will see that English-speaking countries are only highly ranked because they're obviously selling this product as a product. So they're not going to transfer their knowledge to the level that we need it to be transferred. And so we need to look at other countries who are not English-speaking only. We need to look at other European countries, to Asian countries, to Middle Eastern countries. For example, our contributor from Iran here she has come here and she has deliberated. We need to also learn from them how they have developed their skill in science and technology. Often, it's just my personal opinion. I don't know how it is in reality, but I find that most of our students study in Bangla, of course, until the age of 18, and then when they go to universities, everything turns into English. That is a huge challenge for, of course, all of us who are Bangla speakers. So we need to find ways in which we should, of course, be teaching English. English is the language of international scientific community. There is no doubt. English is the international lingua franca. There is no doubt. We have to teach that. But we need to look at ways how we can translate scientific journals into Bangla through the help of Bangla Academy or whoever it is, not translate it to make it even more difficult to understand, but translate the contents of higher education books so that our students are able to comprehend the concepts. Because after studying everything until the age of 18 in Bangla, suddenly they are faced with everything in English. Now that's a huge linguistic challenge. There is no bridge between this transformation from the age of class 12 to the higher educational institutions. And if we can make sure that they're either given adequate language training for them to understand higher education contents, or given texts which are at least translated up to a certain level for them to be able to understand these books. We often end up with unskilled higher education graduates because they have not understood the concepts. But if we look at countries which don't speak English, Thailand, for example, Iran, for example, or Japan, for example, or Germany even, so they are not teaching their higher education, their texts, they have good quality texts in their own language, in their higher education institutions, which are very helpful for their students because they get some time to learn an additional language, for example, English or French or whatever it is, and they can then eventually, for their even higher research, they can use that English language skill to use. But if they can't understand the basic contents of their books, they are not going to be skilled graduates, especially in the field of science. So besides promoting learning English language, which is unfortunately or fortunately the language of international scientific community, we must also make a concerted effort to have some contents in higher education in Bangla language. We have seen that in many countries who have developed very quickly their high-skilled population. You go to Thailand or China or Japan, they have good quality higher education contents for their students in their own language. We cannot afford to convert everyone in English language speakers. That's just not possible. It is not our mother tongue, and the standard of teaching of English language itself in our country is not that strong. So we need to make some effort to make sure that our higher education students achieve a certain level of English language, at the same time are given assistance in their mother language in understanding scientific books and technology books in their own language. So this was my last request to BCSIR, whether we could do something on this field especially, where either we translate journals, which is what happens. I've had friends in Iran, I've had friends in Germany. They say that they're able to translate scientific journals into Farsi or German or Japanese or Thai, which isn't the case in our country. That's, talking about journals, but journals are, of course, after their higher education or during their higher education at supplementary reading, but for the basic texts, books that they use, could we make an effort to make them into, to have some parts of it translated in Bangla, not in very difficult Bangla, but also accessible Bangla. I was going through our science books in schools. The language that was used there, Bangla language itself, it was very difficult for the students.